But the most authentic a woman can be is feminine, and the most authentic a man can be is masculine. Now, in the masculine is composed of the feminine essence, and in the feminine is composed of the masculine essence. I think we all understand this across the board. Nobody's willing to argue it, even if you have blue hair and hate men. But really what I often noticed is that there are wounds, and those wounds either as men feminize us and as women masculinize us. Particularly for women, the more trauma you have, the more masculine you become. The harder it is for you to access the authentic part of yourself and to have that space shared in a relationship. Now, here's the beauty of it. You can't get rid of it, right? Because that's would be too convenient if you could just click the hard reset button. You have to integrate it, meaning there's going to be a list of decisions that you're going to make in that, I guess you could say, light and dark state that allows you to expand and grow. So in life, you can't, if the room gets too messy and too cluttered, and there's too much in it, you need to break down the wall into the unknown and then make a bigger home. Because the answer in life is never to get rid of more than it is to build more. That's why integration is so beautiful. And there's a certain point in everybody's life, and just even for me, let me mute this, just even for me, I noticed how I was avoidant. I wouldn't really confront people for a long time. And you're like, what, you wouldn't confront people? Yeah, no, I'd swallow it and repress it. I'd never do outreach. I was never very active with my business. I was never very active with anything on a masculine front. Sure, the only thing that made me feel masculine was around women, but that's a great way to just use women, because if they make you feel powerful, then you're just going to keep going back. And I kind of knew that at the time, but really it was just an aspect of me I wasn't leaning into. And by the way, it was so interesting that when I was able to break down the wall into the unknown and to adopt these masculine characteristics, I started to heal, number one. And number two, expand. I started to grow. Because, there's no mistakes here in the way that you're born. But I do believe that a lot of people the more intelligent you are, and this is something I want you guys to understand, the more Luciferian you're going to be like. As in, you're going to borderline devil-like capacity. And I mean this because you're smart enough to communicate at a very high level that's better than most people can communicate, meaning that you could still be wrong and convince people who are right that they're wrong. And I'm sure anybody who's dated a narcissist understands what that's like. And here's the good news. If you're narcissistic, then you're very intelligent. So there's a certain point where you guys will be drawn to capacity. And anytime where you've been, why are all the guys like this or why are all the guys like that? Just remember, what's attracting you to them is the capacity they have. But they're also showing you, which is a very hard thing to do, especially when you've been hurt. It's a very hard thing to do. So really what I want to talk about today was something that I think most women are completely undermining, which is how much you've masculinized in a lot of ways. And now there's a funny thing, though. There's women who refuse it. And that's another problem. So it's like, whoa, what, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't? Well, let me explain. It's like you're hurt by something. Your response to that trauma is this. You're unaware of it. That was just your response to it. It's like you don't have to develop scar tissue if you go to a surgeon quick enough, right? But if you don't, well, you get scar tissue, and there's a whole process to remove that. But we all understand that what you call removes flexibility, which is very much a feminine superpower. And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, no, women are clearly in touch with the metaphysical. You guys are in touch with other planes of existence. You are more spherical. The feminine symbol in Peru is like a twirl, like that. And it looks like this. That's what it looks like. And I mean, because that's exactly the experience, right? You might even go, well, that's a crazy woman, right? You sure, partially, but what was that?
Sorry, I just had that too. It's okay. Go. Sorry.
Yeah, and I really think that there's something that a lot of people aren't getting into, which is your traumas, your past relationships have changed you, and you haven't done anything about it. That can leave you to two things. The smarter you are, more capable, and borderline satanic. And this is for women. It's like, I'm sorry, just to break it down, but I think a lot of the time, I just need to be a little more forward with you guys and not kind of sugarcoat these things. There's a lot of dishonesty out there, and I really think even Magali was just telling me something here, which is, whoa, you actually create something real? Well, because I'm a real person. I don't think everything I say is 100% right. I don't think that's the point. I'm not protecting anything. But I often notice how much people are protecting, and I want to share that with you guys. And I want you to identify with this because it can really save you and your relationships. It's the ability to take accountability that's not inspired through insecurity, but inspired through a system of values and belief. You have to be able to separate them. Here's the truth. In a reality where most people are afraid of the truth, you have to begin to realize that it will hurt you. It will hurt. You know, why? Well, because sometimes it'll look like this. Hey, honey, I was cheating on you last night. That's why I didn't come home until 2 a.m. You know, like it's one of those things where you're like experiencing so many emotions. You're almost like, okay, I heard the truth, feel good. But wow, that was the worst thing I could ever hear, feel like shit. And then how could I rip you apart? Because at least you're honest, right? That's a rare thing. And then the second is, oh fuck, I feel like shit. So there's something interesting in relationship with the truth here. So I want you guys to make a commitment today for today's lecture, which is to look for it and seek it all the time, even if it does not serve you. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it's actually why we're here. And why? Because most people don't want to seek the truth. Most people are not open to the truth, and most people don't want to grow. So I need you guys to have two values here. The value of vulnerability, which is truth in being, and the search of truth. Because yeah, you're very vulnerable when you're searching for truth. Sometimes you'll find out that fire burns. And also sometimes it's beautiful because it's really real. It's not fantasy. It's not something you're reinforcing. It's real. And then there will come a point where you realize that, hey, I have a desire to grow, so I want to grow. Are you guys willing to accept that those are going to be values that you have? And I think the last one that I think is going to be the most important is that you will be present. So there's a value behind presence, there's a value behind honesty, and a desire to grow. There needs to be that. There needs to be a desire to grow. If you don't have those three things, I really can't say that you'll have a beautiful life or a beautiful relationship. Well, why? And I'll tell you why. Because we're experiencing human evolution. And human evolution is a fascinating thing to experience. It does not mean that we've changed, but it does mean that we've incorporated a new level of understanding, meaning that the language is changing. And if the language is changing and you want the most powerful thing possible, which is influence, and deeply feminine, by the way, well, you better catch up with the times. Because if you don't, well, it's done. Christy, where do you go? Let me go like this. Go for it, Magali.
About the feminine, masculine thing. So I think at the beginning, I don't know if I think I was talking to Skylar about it, and we were talking about like, he said like, I feel in some places you are being presenting more masculine energy because I'm the eldest of my sisters. I'm always the eldest. Like I'm always taking care of everyone. I'm everyone's rock. I'm that person, right? And it's like I'm super independent financially, you name it, right? So when I was saying this, and then I felt offended. He told me you're very masculine, like you're not letting your feminine energy grow. And I felt offended. I was like, why are you saying this? I feel like, and again, I was defensive at that moment, right? So, and then it got me thinking. I was like, it's not my fault if today's men are not actual men, because culturally I was brought up to my dad's figure. All of these men in my life look differently and do things differently, right? So I was stepping up, or I was stepping in for what they were not presenting. So I was sort of blaming the world. Like, it's not my fault that I live in a day and age where they're not stepping up to be men, right? So this was my argument. But then when I started thinking about it, I was like, it is okay. Yes, we are in this day and age. To what you're saying, we are in this day and age. And I think to some certain extent, there was like some switching of the roles or whatever. And don't get me wrong, because of humans' evolution, I feel like in some instances, let me be a female, let me be a girl, let him open the door for me. I don't want to pretend that I'm dumb, no, but I want to, and I started experimenting, right? So I went on a date with a guy, and he was like, oh, let's, the parking's from here. And I was like, and I saw the sign, and it's literally from the other side. So I was like, oh, really? Is it from, it's like, I was making an effort to being more feminine. You know what I mean? So,
You're gonna love this.
And it made him feel good. And I was experimenting, right? I'm not saying like I'm the smartest human on the planet. No, but I've worked so hard and I've studied so hard and I've achieved so much to get here, and I'm super independent and I live a good life. But at the same time, I don't deny that I need this male energy. But because they're not, you know what I mean?
Well, I
I'm
want
gonna,
to pause you
yeah,
there because you're going to go.
yeah,
I just before
yeah,
I can really help you out here. One of the things is you've put yourself in this male energy due to an
yeah,
underlying insecurity. There is an insecurity around worth and value. Insecurity about you, or insecurity, there's some sort of feeling that you can't have what you need in your life unless you do this. And this is the thing that, I'm sorry to break it to you, I can give you another
yeah,
7 figures, you'd still be miserable. This is something that women need to understand. The principle that women protect at the feminine level is connection and people. And I really mean this. You need to know your system of values. And so, I'll give you guys a story. There's a girl I met, very attractive, very intelligent, very funny, very feminine. Around me, and that's the thing that's typically what's going to happen is, okay, if you're very feminine, you're going to get a more masculine response. And now you also have to remember what has put you in these positions to begin with are these underlying insecurities. And if you don't have those 3 values that I talked about, you will never confront them. You have to remember that these things could actually be pushing you away from the things that you want because they are not something that were necessary for survival. You're actually still reinforcing that survival when you're not surviving, meaning you're holding on. And you want to heal, that's just not how it's going to work. There's a lot coming up here, and just be patient with me because I do believe that there's so much value in what you're talking about here. So much value here. And I think a lot of you guys, even Jeanette in a lot of ways has masculinized after her first relationship. And that sucks, right? But it's not impossible. But here's what I want you guys to know, is that what we need to do is kind of make a U-turn. You can't just flip the boat. What that means is pretty much as far as women have gone in the masculine direction, they need to voluntarily turn it around because it's the right thing to do, not because they want to, or it's easy, because it's not easy. And then they need to sail it back, and some. That's what it takes. And the same thing goes for men, right? I have all of these emotions, all of these sensitivity. My hand highest, the most sensitive, overly bearing, emotional person, right? Now I'm there for others. I give people security. Why? What did I want to do? I wanted to go, fuck that. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. Let me hustle. And then when I do it, I fucking finish the party. I thought I was a cool pimp telling these girls to fuck off, but really I feel like shit. I feel inauthentic. I feel like I was trying to be somebody who wasn't me. And I'm doing things that I don't like. And it's all in the name of wealth, money, status, and women. And I feel like shit. So I'm not being an actualized man. I am repressing the part of my humanity that is in the feminine essence and running away from it, thinking that my life will get better if I do that. And then I tried running, and then of course it just gets mirrored in your partner again and again and again. What are all the women that I dated like prior to when I started this journey were all very, very, very masculine. And it was like, well, this sucks. Why? Because when you're in an intimate environment where somebody has sharp edges, you're going to get cut. And then when you get cut, you're wounded. And then now that's going to start changing your behavior even more, and you're going to be even further from your authentic self. So what is this about? Coming back to your authentic self with choice. So we could take your situation, for example, and I think let's focus on you a little bit. There's a certain point where how much of this are you willing to give up, and are you willing to be hurt again? And I mean it. You wouldn't be the feminine unless you had the ability to intuit, to feel, to inspire, to influence, to heal, to be tender, to be soft. And this has changed you whether you like it or not. And let me tell you the worst thing. It will push away the men that you respect, that you desire, and are exceptionally masculine. So I need you to remember that. With the men that you respect, you desire, and are exceptionally masculine, you will reject. And you will find other men to exploit. This is very common when women masculinize, is it doesn't just change the way that you interact with them on a social level. It changes the way you interact with them on a sexual level. Meaning, there will become a certain point to where this insecurity will become about degrading men and outclassing them. And this is going to get a little vulgar, a little intimate today, but I feel like, that's kind of what we need, a little bit real. So what's the one thing we all dislike? When somebody needs you to do something, not because they need it from you, and it would be a tremendous act of love, but because it makes them feel powerful when they throw you under the bus. And okay, this might sound a little interesting, but there's a few things that came up, and I can kind of use this whole framework. And it was something I personally experienced, and I dealt with compassionately because I didn't have the wound behind it. But when these things used to happen to me, and when there was a wound, I'd immediately get reactive, harsh, critical, and I'd rip the person apart with zero compassion. And so what would I secretly reward? A dishonest woman, right? At the end of the day, you want an honest one. Whether it's pretty or it's not, but you want an honest one. So what I often noticed is that you actually are pushing away the masculine men in your life due to the underlying insecurity that you have that has made you adopt masculinity as a solution to your problems. And by the way, just so you know, what really makes a woman beautiful is the connection to her beauty. Inner beauty is what makes a woman beautiful. What does it mean to be beautiful? Well, it's a representation of a divine image, okay? So just letting you understand it's an inspiration for art, and there's something unique about it. So don't think that this is, you guys are screwed for having gone this way. The whole point is actually that you're not, but I want you to heal so that you can really have what you're looking for at the capacity you want it at. Now, there's a lot of good things that have happened in this process. Your ability to meet your needs, is that a concern anymore? No? You made history, right? Now, if you want to keep doing this, then you're reinforcing the core level insecurity, which is, I won't have a guy treat me the way that I want to be treated. What is the core level insecurity? I don't think I'm enough for the guy that I respect. What are you saying about yourself? Those are all questions that need to be asked. And here's the thing. The more masculine you become as a woman, and the more capable you become, or the more traumatized you become, the more likely you are to put them into boxes to get what you need from them. So, for example, why did you guys masculinize? Where there's a need for power and recognition? How did you guys not get it as a woman? It's a great question to ask yourself. There's a lot of recognition that a lot of women don't get. You know, Christy, something you mentioned in relationship to sports. And it's like, well, why? I got a lot more attention and a lot more validation when I did those things, and you can control it. And if you guys are ever kind of getting off here, just don't feel free to interrupt me at any point. I want to communicate with you guys, not enforce anything here. So there's a certain point where eventually this will hit a point to where you mistreat others. Where, and you've seen this before, right? If a guy is hurt enough by women, he'll degrade them in order to feel powerful. If a woman is hurt enough by men and not given enough masculine attention or love, she will degrade them. Now, where it starts to get scary is when you're unaware of you doing that and you create different relationships to meet different needs. So the man that you respect and you love and admire doesn't get the thing that you give your other guy that you don't respect, but meets a core level need. So listen to this loud. The men that meet your most intimate needs, you exploit and you reject. But the men that meet your ego and your intelligence and your mentality, you keep at arm's reach. But really, what are you doing? Is you're keeping everybody at arm's reach and nobody gets close. So what you're doing for the person that represents the ideal, you're rejecting. And the person that actually can meet your core level needs, you're rejecting. And this is very interesting because I talk about sex a lot and people's relationship with it. And even for people that haven't, right? That's also still a metric of what? Distance and protection. So these things can run really deep. Well, why? Because there's a level of awareness that needs to be brought under these kind of behaviors. And if you don't, you kind of become narcissistic. And that's the biggest fear. So anyways, I met this girl and she was telling me about her family. And we have amazing polarity with each other. But I noticed that she would hide around me. And it was like, well, why would she hide around me? Well, because there's an aspect of her that's wounded. And she's afraid of asking that from a man that's very masculine, very principled, that she respects and desires. You guys want to know what that was? Well, after years of being traumatized, let me explain what will happen to women. They kind of get high at the idea of a man taking care of them at a really, probably even at a certain point, where they go into their feminine energy. So now this is going to be interesting because now we're going to talk about energies, right? You know the whole thing, we had the eclipse happen recently? What is that in representation of, right? That's the feminine in front of the masculine. Well, that's interesting. Hey, I don't like that. Let me explain. It's kind of part of life, right? But I think.
Where did this come from?
What do you mean?
It's interesting. It's interesting.
Right? But what I'm saying is we're seeing it in the universe where these things will happen to maintain order, right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing that's so beautiful is that man and woman together can heal generational wounds. if they have the desire to grow, the courage and vulnerability necessary to be honest, and then, of course, the resilience that you're going to need to confront somebody and get down to the bottom of things. That's how you maintain respect and love someone. Well, let me explain why we're all human beings. And so, look, I can kind of give this to you very interestingly, is that when men are in their feminine energy, they can actually heal their masculine energy. They can heal it. And they could also spend more time in the feminine, creating an expansion of who they are. The same thing for women. They can create more order of their feminine. But what do you think it is when a masculine man and a feminine woman come together? It's not the same thing all the time. There's actually a certain point where you realize that there's a level of individuality to these two people, and that they need to heal certain things in order to move forward and to gain deeper access to each other. And how the hell are you going to do that if it's not through your fetishes? Now, there's something very interesting about fetishes. They are, if you contextualize them appropriately, they seem weird. They seem easily rejectable, right? And I think every woman who's had some weird fetish is like, oh, they're going to reject that immediately. But let me tell you what it is. It is the deepest form of love that you can receive from somebody. Now, what I often notice from people is that they're more likely to receive their fetishes, the things that are very deep emotional needs, from people that they don't respect, that they don't even know, than people that they know, respect, and desire. So what they're doing is they're keeping an arm's reach away from an opportunity to heal, which is what you're trying to do, right? And it's like, well, ask yourself a question. If I masculinize this much, I've probably been traumatized a lot. What do I need a little bit of? Healing. What part of you are you afraid of presenting to the masculine that you desire and respect about you that may feel like degrading them? It's a very interesting question to ask. And so now this kind of brings up the second question, and this is a very interesting one too. Women, there's one thing women absolutely hate. It's when men can only feel power around women when they degrade them. It's no longer masculine and feminine energy anymore. It's insecure energy. And I always used to be that guy. And also the same thing goes for women, right? You need to listen to me. Oh, well, now you're with the subordinate. And any guy that's willing to accept that, you won't respect, right? So what does she have?
It's disrespectful, yeah.
Right? She has a need to be served by the masculine, right? But most people don't want to contextualize these things because they actually don't believe in it because there's still hatred. They know they're doing the wrong thing. But over long periods of time, they will exploit others and use people, which is psychotic. It is psychotic to use people, just letting you know that. And most people don't know that, but even you, Magali, right? This resistance you have to this guy, there's a part of you that uses him for some kind of attention that you really enjoy and admire, right? But there's still no honest intentions about what you really need. That would require a level of vulnerability and perhaps maybe even a confrontation. But people hate that shit. And so I can kind of give you this whole thing, and it's very interesting to see the depth that people will go with it, right? So going back to what I was saying initially, which is there's a certain point where kindness, what, you don't think that there's a kindness for the moon to step in front of the sun? There absolutely is. You know, and there's also a certain aspect, there's a part of the moon that gets to be touched. It's healing. So, and that's usually not the face of the moon, is it? It's the backside. So it's the unknown parts. It's the parts that are in the shadow that need what? Light. Why? Do you do it every fucking day? No, if there was eclipse every day, we probably wouldn't be circling around the sun and we'd probably all die. But I don't know anything about any of that, so I'm not going to continue. But I do think that there is something very interesting about that. There's a light being shined on the parts that don't get a lot of light. You know, there's a lot of you, if you were going to take the moon, you guys need a part of you that needs a little bit of light on it to heal. Do you want to know something really beautiful about healing wounds? It takes another 365 days and maybe 40 years before you need to go get some light on there again. But your willingness to do that shows you how strong you are. Now, what I'm noticing now is that people can't have relationships because they're forgetting the fact that as women, you've masculinized. I don't care. If you're here, you have. And as men, you feminized. I don't care. If they're on my other group, you have. They resort to manipulation, shadow, avoidance. None of those things are great qualities for men to have. We need men that are bold, men that are intentional, men that are honest, men that are strong, men that are hardworking, men that believe in themselves, men that have vision. That's what I help men develop. But do you want to know how they come in? Well, here's what you don't understand, Mr. Moses, is that I've actually done, shut the fuck up. You're here for a reason. And I'm not joking. And they wake up. And I know it's kind of funny when I say it like that, but you should really understand how manipulative those things come from. They're not actually coming from a place of I want to know. They're coming from a place of I want to discredit, to run. Because that's easy. It'd be a lot harder to take advice from somebody than it would be to confront that person in developing that nature. So there's a certain point it affects what you really need from people, right? And so the thing is, it's very difficult in life, is to ask that from the people that you respect the most. Why? Because they will challenge you the most. You know, there's just one thing that lights women up if they want to grow. Only if they want to grow. This is why I love challenging people. It's because you can see the people that want to grow and learn more, that want to take accountability and change for the best. And I could see people that don't, just by challenging them. Just by challenging them. So Magali, there's a lot of things that we do to keep them at arm's reach so that we don't get hurt again. We have to understand what is the underlying insecurity that has made you go this far. And it's around men. You need to remember that. It's around men that has made you go this far. And by the way, it's a part of you that didn't feel loved. What's going to happen when you're around somebody and you still hold that hate? You're going to degrade them. And then they will be okay with it because it's familiar to them. So you guys aren't attracting each other based off your strength. You're attracting each other based off your weaknesses, and you're enjoying it. So I met this girl and I asked her what her past relationship was like. And she was like, oh, he was very much like a submissive type. And I was like, well, why would you go for a submissive type? Clearly you have highly narcissistic traits and you have very masculine traits, and you've integrated a lot of it. Now, 2 years later, after that divorce. But why were you with that guy for 5 years? You ever think about that? You guys as women don't have time. You don't have time. Don't waste it. You don't have 5 years to waste. There's this one post that I posted. Every woman there said, this is devastating me to watch this. I am in tears. Yeah, because nobody's going to fucking say it to you. Don't waste your time. It's what makes somebody valuable. If a guy spends all of his time with a hooker and then once a week with the love of his life, who's more valuable? The hooker. Your time is what makes you valuable, not the people that you claim is valuable. Your ego likes to disproportionately allow you to feel some sort of validation, but it keeps you alone. It keeps you afraid because you don't want to hear the truth, which is you secretly like 6 days a week with the girl that you pay to have sex with you. Why? It's familiar. So I want you guys to remember this. And this is even for you, Magali. You have to look at how sensitive you are and how that sensitivity has been repressed, that need for attention has been repressed in a world where men don't like to give attention to women, like to exploit women, don't like to work hard, and don't want women as much as they say they do. Why? Let me tell you why men don't secretly want women. You don't get how fucking dangerous it is to be with a woman. How much you will invoke in men, and how dangerous you can truly be to us.